Hello and welcome to today's Health and Sanity Call with me, Dr. Joe. I'm a professional speaker who helps busy people stay healthy, sane, and productive. And during these difficult times, we've started making these calls mid-March just to help you stay a little bit more positive and frankly, to help me stay more positive. And we've got an excellent guest here to help us. He's the best-selling, award-winning author of the book called Find the Upside of the Down Times, How to Turn Your Worst Experiences into Your Best Opportunities. Go ahead, Rob, show us the book. Show us the book. Yeah, there you go. Rob is a psychologist. He wrote this book. It's a kind of an autobiographical self-help book because he's experienced not just the coronavirus pandemic, but he's been fired, divorced, depressed, self-employed for 40 years, I can relate to that, shot in the center of his chest by an unknown assailant. He survived a 2-year IRS audit and widowed after 30 years caring for a spouse with multiple sclerosis. So this man walks his talk. And again, he's here to talk about how to make it through the difficult times with a more positive attitude. So again, welcome to Rob.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share some insights that have made a difference in my life for the people in your audience.
Well, so I know you said you had this 5-step process, and I love 5-step process. 3-step, 4-step, 5-step, love it all.
Yeah, steps are important. It came from trying to figure out how does stress happen in the first place. And I started to realize that we have some habits about how we respond to anything that isn't the way we want it to be. So anytime anything...
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, anytime anyone or anything isn't the way we want it to be, we have a stressful reaction. I call it the automatic stress reaction.
So it's not just because I'm a control freak?
Well, that could add to it. That would make there more things. Because there's only a few things you can control. We can get to that.
Oh, yeah. In fact, you haven't been with us throughout this whole thing. I started off with the serenity prayer. And we talked about how much of what's going on right now we can't control. But these calls are all about the things that we can control. So, yes. And we can certainly control ourselves.
Well, not initially. See, that's one of my insights is that we can't control our initial reaction to anything.
Okay.
It's a habit. And so when people get insights about things they could do, and they find themselves still doing the old way, then they tend to beat themselves up. And I want to relieve that stress by saying, you can't control your initial reaction to anything. It's a habit, but you can learn to recognize it quicker and move through it faster. And so what to recognize is something I call automatic stress reaction. And that is we have a tendency to hold our breath, to tense our muscles, to have self-doubt, to think negative and get serious. And I think that happens just every time anything in the way we want it to be. Just like that. And I think we probably do it 20 times a day. So we're really good at it.
Mm-hmm.
But what we could do is learn how to notice it quicker, to recognize that that's happening faster. And then you have to have somewhere to go to. So you were talking about the 5 steps. It's because that automatic stress reaction had 5 steps. And so I came up with what would be the opposite of each one. So the opposite of holding your breath would be breathing deeper.
So step 1 is to take some deep breaths.
Yes, and I think that's valuable on so many levels because one tends to break the trance of the automatic stress reaction, but it also exercises your control and it's taking you in a positive direction. So if you did just that, that would be huge. But the next step,
now, I have noticed that I'm a natural redhead. So Mom always said that was why I overreacted to things, right? But I have found that she always said to take a few deep breaths. I found that even if I take 1 deep breath, that gives me 3 seconds to say, maybe I shouldn't say that.
That's true. Just that breath can make a profound difference. But then the next step is to relax completely. Mm-hmm. And anytime you're moving, it takes muscle tension. So to do this in a moment really requires some practice beforehand. The progressive relaxation of tightening the muscle and then releasing it. But once you've practiced that, when you take the deep breath, on the out breath is the time to relax. I think
that makes sense. So, okay. So tell us what progressive relaxation is for people who aren't familiar with that term.
It's just basically tightening one part of the body while you keep the rest of it relaxed and holding it tight and then releasing it. Because what happens when you tighten the muscle and then release it, it goes to a lower level than it was a few moments before. So it's just a progressive way of going through the body, tightening one part and releasing it, then tighten another part and releasing it, and just moving through your whole body to leave your body in a more relaxed state.
Yeah, and I noticed that where I hold my tension is in my shoulders. You know, they go up like this. And so, yeah, I did the same thing that you said. You take a deep breath and then focus along the way. And once I'm at my shoulders, it seems like the rest of it kind of goes along because that's where I'm holding it. Do you hold it in the same place? Or
everybody has it in different places. So you need to know where yours is, and usually you're aware of it because there's pain there.
So where is yours, Rob?
It's in like this part of my shoulder.
Yeah.
And so by the time it gets there, it's already been in you for some time.
So it's good, you know, if you can think back of where you've been complaining about pain. Is it in your lower back? You know, is it more headaches? Is it shoulders? Right? That would make
all
sense.
Of that gives you a sense of where to go. But breathe, relax, and then the third step is reassure yourself.
Okay.
And this is based on the idea that your thinking has two possibilities. You either have a positive thought or a negative thought. And part of the automatic stress reaction is having self-doubt, thinking I can't. You quoted Ford a lot on there. People think they can and people think they can't, and they're all right.
Right. Whatever they think is what the truth is to them.
And all our stress is when we think we can't. Whenever we think we can't handle something, we're going to have a stressful reaction. The problem is we don't believe we can handle something unless we see exactly how we can. But that's not really required. It's not required to know how you're going to believe that you can. Right. And just learning to notice whether your thought is a positive or negative one. And the challenge is you can't ask yourself if what I think is true. You think everything you think is true. We think every thought we have is right. The question is, does this feel good to believe? Would this help me? And so that causes you to begin to question. So the third step is to reassure yourself first about your value, because no baby is born with self-doubt.
I know. I have little grandbabies, and you're absolutely right there. They're cocky as heck. They are the best. They can do anything they want.
So whatever self-doubt we have, we learned based on what fear or anxiety or whatever it doesn't make it true that we have that reaction. It's just a habit. So first I want to reassure myself about my value, that it's okay for me to be me. It's okay to have the strengths I have and have the weaknesses I have. To make the good decisions and the bad decisions, that I am a student in a school and that I'm here to learn how to be a more effective, powerful, loving, supportive, loving human being. And anytime I'm experiencing stress, I'm probably not doing it. Probably not being kind to myself in that moment. So how do I reassure myself about my value, but also about my ability to deal with the challenges of my life? So there are a lot of challenges we have, and we don't know what the answer is. And our mind has a habit of projecting a negative into the unknown.
Right.
I think it's kind of a protective survival mechanism.
We have a tendency to say, this is going to be horrible. It's the worst. I'll never recover from this.
Disasterizing.
Right. Yeah. I remember somebody was sharing their story about how when they lost the job, it went to, now I'm not going to be able to afford my house. I'm going to be homeless, living under a bridge with 3 cats. You know, I mean, like,
I even call that the bag person syndrome.
The bag person syndrome. That's interesting.
So I have a whole model about that does exactly the same thing.
What would you recommend to somebody who's going down that path? These are some difficult times. How do you reassure yourself that you can make it?
The first thing is the breathing. The second thing is the relaxing. The third thing is reassuring yourself about your value. Now, when you say, I don't know how to handle something, that doesn't mean you're not able to learn how. So Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People begin at the end. You have to realize that every worry you have is imagining something you don't want to have happen. That's what a worry is. What is the opposite of what you don't want to have happen? It's what you do want to have happen.
Now, I was going to say in the introduction, Dr. Rob, I mentioned all the things that have happened to you, shot in the center of your chest, divorce, caring for your wife, all of that, I think, right, helps you to put something in your pocket and say, wait a minute, now look I dealt with this, I dealt with this, I can handle this too, right?
Well, a good question is, what in your life have you not survived?
And if you're still here on earth, you have, right?
Yeah, but I think there's an important insight here, because if you're thinking about worry as thinking about what I don't want to have happen, and the opposite of that is what I do want to have happen, that's called a goal. So the opposite of every worry is a goal. So learning how to recognize your worry for what it is, worry, and then flip it to the goal and hold your mind on that long enough to come up with one positive idea, one step, one action you could take, which might be doing a search, because I don't know how to handle this. Let me do a search. Let me call a friend. So any action that you take in the direction of the goal gives you more information you didn't have a moment ago. So breathe, relax, reassure yourself. Think positive is not a Pollyannish thing. It's a very active, dynamic, creative, productive thing. I'm thinking positive that there is a path. I don't know what it is.
Right.
I just need to focus on what's the next step on the path.
And that's going to make you feel more in control as well, right? Because you're in charge of your own destiny.
And not only that, but when I take that next step, I learn new information I didn't have before. And then I see other steps. So it's a process of having confidence that you can figure things out. Now, I learned how to do that in college by programming computers, learning about coding, because I learned that a computer doesn't do anything you didn't tell it to do. It can't make choices. So if it didn't do what I wanted to do, I didn't tell it right. And so it helped me go back and look at the coding to see where I made a mistake, to typing or whatever. But I think
that's a great analogy.
Well, for us as human beings, I think it's very true. Our beliefs, what we think are true, are the codes that produce our behavior, that produce results in our life. So if I don't like how I'm feeling, now the only exception is if I have chemical or neurological damage. If that's going on, get some medication. But if you don't have any chemical or neurological damage, then how you think is causing how you're feeling.
Yeah.
And your belief in that whatever you think is right is probably not the best thought to have. So breathe, relax, reassure yourself, think positive about, I'm going to figure this out, and then look for some humor, because I find that if you're willing to look for it, it's more often there. When you were talking about when I got shot, it was just nearby where I live, and a car came by late at night. I was just walking, and the car guy got out, and I thought he was going to ask directions, and he came over and told me to get in his car. He grabbed me, and somehow I was able to step out of his reach, and I said, "What do you want?" And he just smiled and shot me. And what I think about at the time later is, after he shot me, they ran away, and I went to the first house with a light on, and the guy who opened the door was wearing operating clothes, which I thought was a good sign.
Yeah.
Now, where does the humor come in and all that? Well, it didn't in that moment, but when the ambulance got there, the guys came in with a stretcher, and when you think I get shot, you think of something horrible happening, but the truth is the bullet stuck in the sternum, and it grabbed my shirt and spun it and created wadding around the bullet, and I didn't bleed at all. So you wouldn't even know I had been shot, and it didn't knock me down. And so those are some kind of miraculous things that I'm very blessed to have had happen. But the funny thing is, when the ambulance came and the guys came in with a stretcher, I said, "No, I can get up and walk out to the ambulance." Says, "No, you have to lay down on the stretcher. You got to do this right." So I laid down on the stretcher, and then they couldn't get me out of the house. And they said, "Okay, well, you can get off the stretcher. You can get."
Because the door was too narrow?
Yeah, they couldn't get me around the corners of the house and stuff. So I thought that was funny. And then when I was in the ambulance, I'm thinking, damn, this is a good story. We're professional speakers. You're always wanting good stories, and your best ones are yours. Yeah. I'm in the ambulance taking notes, on this story. And so just there are points in there where there was humor, and in some ways I didn't even know it until the first time I did the talk and was recorded. The audience was laughing in places I wasn't kind of intending, didn't expect, but I learned how the humor is there important to release some of the tension. And I found that you can find that in lots of situations.
Yes. Yes. So you're in Houston right now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I lived there from the late 80s into 2002 or 3, something like that. And you probably remember some of the floods. There have been some floods since I left.
Yes, there have. It's a regular thing here.
In 1994, our house got flooded. Wow. And it wasn't a hurricane. It was just a tropical storm that hung over the city, as happens a lot. And it was a Cypress Creek that was a mile away. It flowed right into our house. And it was supposedly a 100-year floodplain, but all of Houston is.
Yeah, we don't know that. And that's really how most of the floods happen here. It's because of bayous and creeks overflowing.
Yes, one flows into another, and it came in the house. My daughter was 4 years old at the time. My husband was not in the house. And as I am watching the water come in, I'm freaking out, you can imagine, because I didn't expect it. It was just drizzling outside. I didn't know. And I started moving things, but going kind of crazy, freaking out my daughter. So she's crying. And I remember at one point, I took some deep breaths on the stairs and I said, Allie, remember in the movie Annie where Daddy Warbucks had that neat indoor swimming pool? Look, we've got our very own indoor swimming pool. And I laughed and she laughed. And it was weird because clarity came back as to what I needed to do, including calling for someone to get us out of the house.
How we think about things makes all the difference.
Yeah.
And the challenge is just being aware of what we're thinking. And again, you can't just trust that what you're thinking is right just because you're thinking it. I used to give guided tours at the University of Texas when I was a student there. And it would end in front of the main building where the tower is. And across the front of the main building is the phrase, "You shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free." Now, that's a quote from the Bible.
Yeah.
Being a psychology student, I saw it a different way. I saw that if what you're thinking doesn't make you feel free, it's possible it might not be true. And that gave me another way of questioning my own thinking about whether or not I'm able to handle the challenges of my life. And I've come to believe that it's literally impossible for anything to happen I can't handle. I might have to change. I might have to get help. I might have to learn something, but I kind of believe the challenges are in our life to help us learn how to deal with that. And some of them are pretty challenging, like my wife's illness and passing. The shooting thing only lasted about 10 seconds. As dramatic as that is, it was really the recovery that was much more challenging. The fact that they kept my chest open to check to make sure I was okay. I always make the joke, I wish they could have just peeked because I was okay. But learning how to just breathe and relax and reassure yourself, and all of what I've called the elementary school lessons in life. When you're at the stoplight, when the computer crashes, or, when Zoom doesn't work the way you wanted it to. All the little things that happen all throughout the day, the more we are able to breathe, relax, reassure ourselves, think positive, this too will pass, and I'm going to learn from this process and look for some humor. We shift and change our actual experience that affects our body, that affects the health of our mind and our body and our spirit too. And so practicing the elementary school lessons, so when the graduate school lessons come, you've got some momentum built up.
There you go. Well, I can see why you called your book what you did, because you're ingenious in how you flip things around for us. So the upside of
how to turn your worst experiences into your best opportunities. And each chapter is an experience, like the shooting story and getting audited and all that. And then there's what's the lesson I learned in that experience. And here's an activity that the reader could go through to maybe save them the time and avoid the pain that I went through to learn that lesson.
Yeah, good. And I'm assuming the more you do this, then the easier the process happens.
Well,
right?
You learn how to recognize the stress quicker and move through it faster. That doesn't mean that in the moment it's not just as intense as ever. Okay, so I still get stressed, I still get worried, I still get anxious, I still get afraid, all that stuff still happens, and maybe just as intensely, but not for as long. And I think that healing, like even from grief and loss, there are times when, and my wife passed away about 11 years now, there's times when the emotion overwhelms me, it's just as intense as ever, but it doesn't last for as long, and there's more time in between. And I think that's how you really measure growth too.
Right.
Not that you never get stressed anymore, but for when it does, it doesn't go as deeply and it doesn't last as long and there's more time in between.
Good point. Good point. So Dr. Rob Pennington, how can we reach out to you if we want to get more information about you and what you do?
Bunch of different ways. Speedthroughstress.com will get you to a 20-minute...
Speedthroughstress.com.
We'll get you to a 20-minute video of me overviewing the 5 steps in Speed Through Stress. There's a 50-page workbook that I put together based on the first chapter in this book. Going into each of those 5 steps, I thought it would just be 5 pages, but I talk a lot.
looks like you and I have something in common. I can turn one small thing into...
Yeah. And then also just drrobspeaks.com takes people to my speaking page. And then there's...
And Dr. Rob would just be DR.
Well, I got it both ways, just in case, you know.
Good. drrobspeaks.com.
Right. And drrobcoaches.com. I do a lot of coaching now online and helping people.
Well, fabulous.
We do a lot of work with, mainly what we do is provide practical tools for improving the performance of leaders and teams. So working with corporations, leaders and their teams is a lot of what we share our material with.
Thank you very much, Rob.
I want to thank everybody for being here.
All right. Well, we'll see you all on Monday. I hope you all have a great weekend. Bye, Rob.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.